The day I buried my husband, my mother checked her watch 3 times, sighed loudly, and asked if we could wrap this up before traffic got bad. For a second, I thought grief was making me hallucinate. Then my father leaned toward her and whispered words that would destroy our family forever. Honestly, this whole thing is becoming a trivial event. I heard every single word. And in that moment, standing beside my husband's coffin, I stopped thinking of them as my parents. My name is Claire Bennett, and this is the story of how the people who raised me abandoned me during the darkest moment of my life, and how their cruelty eventually cost them everything. 3 weeks earlier, my husband Daniel was alive. That sentence still hurts. Even now. Even after everything that happened. Daniel wasn't just my husband. He was my best friend. My safe place. The person who believed in me when nobody else did. We met when we were 23. I was working 2 jobs and struggling to pay student loans. He was a firefighter with a ridiculous sense of humor and a smile that could make terrible days feel manageable. For 15 years, we built a life together. Not a perfect life. But a happy one. We had a beautiful daughter named Lily. A cozy home. Countless memories. And then one rainy Thursday morning, everything disappeared. Daniel responded to a highway accident. A fuel tanker exploded. 3 firefighters never made it home. Daniel was one of them. The police officer who knocked on my door looked heartbroken before he even spoke. The moment I saw his face, I knew. I just knew. The next few hours exist in my memory like shattered glass. Broken pieces. Hospital corridors. People crying. Someone holding my arm. Lily screaming when she realized Daddy wasn't coming back. I don't remember much else. Grief doesn't arrive politely. It crashes through your life like a hurricane. The funeral was scheduled for the following week. Friends arrived. Neighbors brought food. Daniel's fellow firefighters organized a tribute. People traveled across the country to honor him. Everyone came. Everyone except my parents. At least emotionally. Physically, they were there. Emotionally, they might as well have stayed home. My relationship with them had always been complicated. Growing up, they cared about appearances more than people. Image mattered. Status mattered. Money mattered. Feelings were inconveniences. When I married Daniel, they immediately looked down on him. My father called him just a firefighter. My mother constantly compared him to wealthy men she wished I had married. For years, Daniel endured their insults with patience I never understood. Whenever they mocked him, he'd squeeze my hand and whisper, "They're your parents. Don't let me come between you." God, I wish he hadn't been so kind. Maybe I would have cut them off sooner. Maybe I could have protected myself. Instead, I spent years making excuses for them. Years believing they would eventually change. I was wrong. The funeral proved it. While hundreds of people gathered to honor Daniel's life, my parents treated the entire event like an inconvenience. My mother complained about the weather. My father complained about parking. Neither offered comfort. Neither hugged me. Neither even spoke to Lily. Then came the moment that changed everything. The moment I overheard their conversation. The moment they called my husband's burial a trivial event. I felt something inside me break. Not crack. Not weaken. Break. Completely. After the service ended, people lined up to offer condolences. Firefighters saluted. Friends cried. Daniel's captain delivered a beautiful speech. Meanwhile, my parents left early. No goodbye. No support. Nothing. The following day, I made a decision. I stopped calling them. Stopped texting. Stopped trying. For the first time in my life, I allowed silence to exist between us. And surprisingly, they didn't seem to notice. Weeks passed. Then months. Not once did they ask how Lily was coping. Not once did they check on me. Not once did they visit. Then something strange happened. 6 months after Daniel's death, I received a call from an attorney. At first, I assumed it involved insurance paperwork. Instead, he asked me to come to his office immediately. His tone sounded serious. Almost urgent. When I arrived, he handed me a thick folder. Your husband instructed us to contact you if anything happened to him. My heart sank. Daniel had prepared documents? Why? The attorney opened the file. Inside were letters. Financial record. Property document. Investment statement. And one revelation that left me speechless. For years, Daniel had quietly invested money. Not recklessly. Not secretly in a dishonest way. He simply never bragged about it. Never talked about it. Never wanted attention. According to the records, those investments had grown into something substantial. Very substantial. I stared at the numbers. Then stared again. Because they couldn't possibly be correct. The portfolio was worth several $1,000,000. My husband. The man my parents dismissed as just a firefighter. Had built extraordinary wealth. Without anyone knowing. Including me. Tears filled my eyes. Not because of the money. Because even after his death, Daniel was still protecting us. Still taking care of Lily and me. Still proving everyone wrong. Then the attorney revealed another surprise. Daniel had written a personal letter. Specifically for me. My hands trembled as I opened it. The first line immediately made me cry. If you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you're probably angry at me for planning ahead. That sounded exactly like him. I laughed through tears. Then I kept reading. The letter contained memories. Advice. Messages for Lily. Expressions of love. But near the end, one paragraph stood out. One paragraph that would eventually expose a shocking family secret. Daniel wrote. If your parents ever show interest in my assets, be careful. There are things I discovered that never felt right. I frowned. What did that mean? I continued reading. Apparently, several years earlier, Daniel noticed unusual behavior involving my parents and my grandmother's estate. At the time, he didn't have proof. Only suspicions. But he had documented everything. Dates. Conversations. Financial inconsistencies. Patterns. The deeper I read, the more unsettled I became. Because Daniel believed my parents had hidden something. Something connected to my grandmother's inheritance. Something significant. And if he was right, then my parents weren't just insensitive. They were hiding a secret. A very expensive secret. A secret that would soon come crashing into the open. And when it did, the people who called my husband's burial a trivial event would discover exactly how costly cruelty can become. For the next several days, I couldn't stop thinking about Daniel's letter. Every sentence felt important. Every note felt deliberate. My husband wasn't the type of person who made accusations without reason. If he believed something was wrong, there was a reason. The problem was that he was no longer here to explain it. So I started looking through the documents he left behind. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Property records. Old emails. Notes from family gatherings. Then I found a folder labeled Grandma Evelyn. My stomach tightened. Grandma Evelyn had died 4 years earlier. She was the only person in my family who genuinely loved Daniel. Unlike my parents, she never cared about status or money. She cared about character. And she adored him. I opened the folder. Inside were copies of estate documents. Nothing unusual at first. Then I noticed handwritten notes Daniel had attached to several pages. One note simply said, "Numbers don't match." Another said, "Ask why Claire received less." And another, Look at lake property. I stared at the words. Received less? Less than whom? When Grandma died, I never questioned the inheritance. My parents handled everything. They told me Grandma's estate wasn't very large. A modest amount had been divided among family members. I trusted them. Why wouldn't I? They were my parents. But now doubt crept into my mind. The next morning, I contacted the attorney who handled Grandma's estate. To my surprise, he agreed to meet immediately. The moment I sat down in his office, I sensed something strange. He looked uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. After several minutes, I finally asked. Did my parents tell me everything about Grandma's estate? The attorney sighed heavily. Then he removed his glasses. That was never a good sign. No. One word. That was all it took. My heart dropped. What do you mean, no? He opened a file. A thick file. Much thicker than I expected. And then he revealed something that changed everything. According to Grandma's original will, I wasn't supposed to receive a small inheritance. I was supposed to receive nearly half her estate, including ownership in several valuable properties. I felt dizzy. What? The attorney nodded. Your grandmother specifically wanted you protected. I could barely process the information. Then came the next bombshell. Several amendments appeared shortly before Grandma's death. Amendments that drastically reduced my share. Amendments signed while Grandma was heavily medicated in hospice care. Amendments that benefited my parents tremendously. The room began spinning. Are you saying they manipulated her? The attorney looked careful with his words. I'm saying there were concerns. Concerns. That single word carried enormous weight. Suddenly Daniel's suspicions made sense. Suddenly every piece fit together. I drove home shaking. Not because of the money. Because of the betrayal. Again. Always betrayal. It seemed impossible. My husband dies. My parents mock his funeral. Then I discover they may have stolen part of my grandmother's inheritance. How much cruelty could one family contain? Apparently more than I imagined. A week later, another surprise arrived. My mother called. For the first time in months. I almost didn't answer. Curiosity won. Hello? Her voice sounded unusually cheerful. That immediately made me suspicious. Claire, sweetheart. Sweetheart. Interesting. She hadn't called me sweetheart in years. What do you want? A long pause followed. Then she laughed nervously. I thought we should reconnect. There it was. The performance. The fake concern. The sudden interest. I knew exactly what had changed. Someone had discovered Daniel's assets. Someone knew I wasn't struggling financially. Someone wanted access. The timing wasn't a coincidence. It never was. Sure enough, 2 days later, my parents appeared at my front door. Smiling. Carrying flowers. Acting like the last year had never happened. Lily was upstairs. Thankfully. She didn't need to witness this. My father sat on the couch. My mother pretended to cry. Then came the speech. The excuses. The justifications. The revisionist history. People grieve differently. We didn't mean those comments. You misunderstood. I stared at them. A year earlier, those explanations might have worked. Not anymore. I had heard too many lies. Then my father finally revealed the real reason for the visit. We heard Daniel left significant assets. There it was. The truth. Finally. Not concern. Not love. Money. Always money. My stomach turned. You came here for that? My mother quickly interrupted. No, of course not. Then she immediately asked about trusts, investments, properties, accounts. The irony was unbelievable. My husband had been dead for months. Yet they showed more interest in his money than his life. Something inside me hardened. Permanently. Then another twist arrived. A few days later, I received a call from my cousin Rebecca. We were never especially close. Which made the call surprising. Her voice sounded nervous. "Claire, there's something you need to know." I listened quietly. Then she told me a story that made my blood run cold. A month before Grandma died, Rebecca overheard my parents arguing. Apparently Grandma had refused to change her will. She wanted everything left exactly as originally written. According to Rebecca, my father became furious. The argument lasted hours. I sat frozen. Because if that story was true, everything became much worse. This wasn't simple manipulation. This might be fraud. Real fraud. The kind that destroys families. The kind that ends relationships forever. That night I opened every document again. This time I noticed details I'd missed before. Signatures looked inconsistent. Dates seemed strange. Witness information raised questions. The deeper I looked, the worse things appeared. Then I discovered something devastating. One signature on a late amendment didn't match Grandma's handwriting. At all. I compared dozens of documents. Birthday cards. Letters. Checks. Everything. The difference was obvious. Painfully obvious. I couldn't breathe. Because there was only one explanation. Someone forged it. And I already knew who had the most to gain. For the next month, I worked quietly. Carefully. Patiently. I hired specialists. Handwriting experts. Investigators. Legal professionals. I followed Danielle's notes. Every lead. Every clue. Every question. And little by little, the truth emerged. The evidence became overwhelming. Grandma's final amendment was almost certainly fraudulent. The document that redirected millions. The document that benefited my parents. The document that reduced my inheritance. Fraudulent. I should have felt victorious. Instead I felt heartbroken. Because proving the truth meant accepting something terrible. My parents weren't simply selfish. They were capable of almost anything. Then came the confrontation. The one I had imagined 100 times. The one that would change everything. I invited them to dinner. They arrived smiling. Confident. Certain they were still controlling the story. They had no idea what awaited them. I placed a thick stack of documents on the dining table. Their smiles disappeared instantly. My father recognized the papers immediately. His face turned pale. My mother stopped speaking altogether. Then I asked one simple question. Would either of you like to explain this? Silence. The kind of silence that tells you everything. For several seconds, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Nobody spoke. Then my father looked at the documents. And for the first time in my entire life, I saw fear in his eyes. Real fear. Because he finally understood. The daughter they underestimated. The daughter they ignored. The daughter they abandoned during the worst moment of her life. Had discovered the truth. And the secret they buried years ago was finally about to explode. The fear in my father's eyes lasted only a second. Then the mask returned. The same arrogant expression he always wore whenever he thought he could control a situation. "You're making a mistake," he said calmly. I almost laughed. Even now. Even surrounded by evidence. Even caught. He still thought he could talk his way out. My mother sat frozen beside him. Her hands trembled. She wouldn't look at me. That alone told me more than words ever could. I slowly pushed the documents across the table. Handwriting analysis. Witness statements. Estate records. Expert opinions. Months of investigation. Months of truth. Explain the signature. My father barely glanced at the papers. It was your grandmother's decision. No. My voice remained calm. Try again. The room became silent. Outside, rain tapped against the windows. Inside, 20 years of family lies were finally running out of places to hide. My mother suddenly started crying. Real tears. Heavy tears. The kind that come from panic. Not guilt. Panic. Claire, please. I stared at her. The same woman who complained about traffic during my husband's funeral. The same woman who never once asked how Lily was coping after losing her father. The tears didn't move me. Not anymore. Tell the truth. My father slammed his hand onto the table. Enough. The sound echoed through the room. But something was different now. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of him. Not even a little. You stole from Grandma. His face reddened. Watch your mouth. You forged documents. Stop. You robbed your own daughter. The silence afterward felt explosive. Then my mother broke. Completely. She buried her face in her hands and sobbed. My father's expression instantly changed. Because he knew. The truth was coming. And he couldn't stop it. Finally, between tears, my mother whispered the words I never expected to hear. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. My heart stopped. Not because of what she said. Because of what it meant. A confession. The first real confession. My father stood so quickly his chair nearly fell over. Don't say another word. But it was too late. Years of secrets were beginning to crack. My mother looked up at me. Her makeup was ruined. Her voice shook. Your grandmother changed the will because of Daniel. The room went silent. My stomach tightened. What? My mother cried harder. She loved him. I felt confused. Angry. Lost. Nothing made sense. Then she revealed the truth. Several years earlier, Grandma had quietly decided Daniel should eventually manage several family properties. Not my father. Not my brother. Daniel. Because she trusted him. Because she believed he was honest. My father hated that decision. Despised it. According to my mother, he viewed it as an insult. A personal attack. For years resentment grew. Then when Grandma became ill, everything escalated. I felt sick listening. Because I already knew where the story was heading. My father wasn't angry about money. He was angry about control. The same thing that had defined our family my entire life. Then came the bombshell. The real bombshell. The revelation that explained everything. Including why my parents despised Daniel so much. My mother looked directly at me. Then whispered. Your grandmother planned to leave almost everything to you. I froze. What? My father closed his eyes. As if he already knew the battle was over. My mother continued. The original estate was worth nearly $9 million. The room disappeared around me. 9 million. For several seconds, I genuinely thought I misheard. My entire inheritance. My future. Lily's future. Gone. Redirected through fraudulent amendments. Hidden through legal tricks. Buried beneath lies. My hands started shaking. Not because of the money. Because of the betrayal. The scale of it. The deliberate cruelty. The years of deception. Then my father finally spoke. His voice sounded tired. Defeated. We deserved it. I stared at him. unable to believe what I was hearing. You deserve my inheritance? His answer shocked me. No. A pause followed. Then he looked directly at me. The family deserved it. Family. That word again. Always family. Until someone else needed compassion. Until someone else was suffering. Then family suddenly became optional. I stood up. Slowly. Quietly. And for the first time, I understood something important. There was nothing left to save. No relationship. No trust. No future together. Just consequences. Over the next several months, everything moved quickly. Civil proceedings began. Forensic reviews expanded. Additional evidence surfaced. And with every new discovery, the situation became worse for my parents. Much worse. Then came another shocking twist. The attorney handling Grandma's estate uncovered hidden correspondence. Letters. Private notes. Instructions. Documents nobody knew existed. Including me. One letter was addressed specifically to Lily. My daughter. The granddaughter Grandma adored. The contents made me cry. Grandma had established a separate trust years earlier. A protected trust. One my parents never found. One they couldn't touch. One worth nearly $3 million. I sat in my lawyer's office and sobbed. Because even after death, Grandma was still protecting us. Still taking care of us. Still seeing the future more clearly than anyone else. Meanwhile, my parents' world began collapsing. Friends distanced themselves. Relatives stopped defending them. People who once admired them suddenly saw the truth. The respectable image they spent decades building shattered almost overnight. Then karma arrived from a completely unexpected direction. My father wasn't the only person involved. Investigators discovered one of the witnesses who signed the amended documents knowingly participated. That witness eventually cooperated. And his testimony destroyed what little defense remained. The story became impossible to deny. The fraud was real. The manipulation was real. The theft was real. Everything Daniel suspected had been true. And suddenly, more than ever, I missed him. Because he should have been there. He should have seen justice happen. He should have watched the truth come out. He should have known he was right. One evening, after another exhausting meeting with attorneys, I sat alone in Daniel's favorite chair. Lily was asleep upstairs. The house felt quiet. Too quiet. I opened the final letter Daniel had left me. A letter I hadn't been emotionally ready to read. At the very bottom, he had written something simple. Something that changed everything. If people ever force you to choose between peace and family, choose peace. The right people won't make you sacrifice it. I read the sentence 5 times. Then 10. Then 20. Because suddenly everything became clear. For years, I had confused family with obligation. Family with guilt. Family with endurance. But real family doesn't mock your grief. Real family doesn't steal your future. Real family doesn't call your husband's burial a trivial event. The following month, the legal battle ended. The estate was corrected. Assets were recovered. Trusts were restored. Properties returned. Not everything. Some things were impossible to undo. But enough. Enough to secure Lily's future. Enough to honor Grandma's wishes. Enough to finally close the wound. Then came the final confrontation. Not in a courtroom. Not in a lawyer's office. In a cemetery. I was visiting Daniel's grave when I noticed 2 familiar figures standing nearby. My parents. For a moment, nobody spoke. The wind moved softly through the trees. My father looked older. Much older. My mother seemed smaller somehow. Broken. Defeated. Finally, my mother spoke. We lost everything. I looked at Daniel's headstone. Then back at her. And quietly replied. No. She frowned. I continued. You lost everything the day you forgot how to love people. Neither responded. Because deep down, they knew it was true. I walked away without anger. Without revenge. Without hatred. And strangely, that felt better than anything else. Because the greatest punishment wasn't what happened in court. It wasn't the money. It wasn't the scandal. It was the fact that they would spend the rest of their lives knowing exactly what they destroyed. Their daughter. Their granddaughter. Their family. As for me, I finally stopped calling them family. Not out of spite. Out of acceptance. Because family isn't defined by blood. Family is defined by who stands beside you when your world falls apart. Daniel did. Grandma did. Lily does. And that's enough. More than enough. The day my parents called my husband's burial a trivial event, they thought they were dismissing a funeral. What they didn't realize was that they were burying their relationship with me too. And unlike Daniel, that relationship never came back.